Hello, friends. We are back, and I'm speaking English because now we're going to have a presentation of Dr. Sally from Kenya. Unfortunately, she is working in Sudan, and unfortunately, we know that in Sudan we have a civil war. It's a war zone, and she could not get, to connect to the internet to be with us here. But we had a plan B. She has already recorded, a video to present to our World Suicide Prevention Day, and I would like to express, all of my admiration, respect, for this wonderful woman, who work to save lives, and she is our representative from Africa, the Mother Africa.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Sally Wangamati. I am a Kenyan by nationality, but I work in South Sudan as a women, peace and security specialist for the African Union. I want to take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this event for giving me an opportunity to interact with you on breaking the silence on suicide. Suicide is on the increase in South Sudan, and this is generated in one way from the intergenerational trauma that has been caused by conflict that has been going on for generations. We have conflict and we have not had mental health services. People going from one conflict to the next with no help at all. And this has begun to take a toll on the generations within South Sudan. The increase of suicide amongst the young Sudanese is on the rise, and especially amongst the boys. The suicide rates are not only high in the country, but they are also high in refugee camps. They are also high in internal displaced people's camps. It is also high amongst the South Sudanese in the diaspora. So really there is need for us to speak about suicide. Domestic violence has also contributed to suicide going up. And this generates from the culture. It also generates from the fact that we do not have laws, that have been put in place to basically deal with issues like domestic violence. This is a country that is in transition, and right now the government is working on legal instruments to make sure that a number of things are addressed. They just passed a bill on commission for truth, healing, and reconciliation. And so that shows where we are in terms of mental health. In South Sudan, we do not have many mental health workers. Therefore, the mental health services is limited. And according to some of the reports, we have only 2 psychiatrists in the capital city to help us deal with the mental issues. Mental issues within South Sudan are just dealt by volunteers or some of the NGOs, that is the non-profit government organizations that are trying to help out people. So indeed, we need to speak about suicide, and we need to think about ways in which we can deal with issues of suicide in South Sudan. The economic status is dire within South Sudan. The situation is so bad. The dollar has, the Sudanese pound is weakening by the day. And so people are not even able to fend for their families. Men are not able to support their children. And this, in one way, would contribute to them committing suicide because of that inability of providing. When we look at the gender roles, where the man is seen as the provider, where the man is seen as the protector, and he is not able to do that, that in one way can be a trigger or can be a catalyst for the person committing suicide. So there is need for the government to come up with mechanisms that can address this issue of suicide. But at the same time, there is the need for the population to begin to have dialogue on issues of suicide, creating awareness amongst the youth, amongst the women, amongst the entire population, using platforms like churches, using platforms like sports, using platforms like just dialogue forums where people can begin to speak about suicide. In my country where I come from, allow me to share, our cultural way of dealing with suicide. And I'm talking about the traditional way of dealing with suicide. Things have improved a little bit now. But in the past, if somebody committed suicide, that person was treated as a pariah within the society. First of all, they were not allowed to be buried within the compound. They would either be buried at the edge of the compound or they would be buried outside the compound. Now, even that person in the house, their body would not be taken out through the main door of the house. It will not actually be taken out through any door in the house. They would have to dig a hole in the wall and then pass through the wall. It was believed that if they go through the door, then it is welcoming the spirit of suicide in that home. As if that was not enough, that particular family was stigmatized, because then even people would not be allowed to marry from that family, because they would say, oh, you're marrying from that family and that family has a spirit of suicide. So when you go there, the children that you have, those children will have the spirit of suicide. And so somehow there was a lot of stigma for the family where somebody committed suicide. In Kenya, communication, people are beginning to communicate, people are beginning to talk about suicide, but that's not enough. We need to do more. Awareness, sensitization needs to be done. Training of health workers needs to be done. Coming back to South Sudan, there is a dire need of training mental health officers who can go out there and talk to the people. Because sometimes when you have somebody who is not trained dealing with somebody with mental issues, sometimes they re-traumatize that particular person. And when re-traumatization happens, it makes that person more susceptible or more vulnerable to committing suicide. We have suicide survivors. No one speaks about the suicide survivors. No one talks to the suicide survivors. And these are the people that we need to bring on board to have dialogue with them. And if we can have even champions amongst them who can share their stories, of how they overcome, of how they survived, I believe that this would contribute immensely to supporting people who are thinking of committing suicide. Now, when we talk about prevention of suicide, there is a lot that needs to be done for us to prevent. And so dialogue is one of them. Training is one of them. Awareness is another aspect that we can, that we can have. Creating forums to openly talk about it. In my country, Kenya, and even in South Sudan, suicide is a criminal. So it is a criminal offense. So if we criminalize suicide, then people will not speak about it. People will not be open to talk about it. The WHO has been talking about decriminalizing suicide so that people can be able to talk about it and address the issue. Decriminalization is not enough. It is talking. It is breaking the silence, that is going to help. 2 weeks ago, as I was coming out of my house to go to work, I found a girl seated on the staircase, and she was crying. So I got interested and just began speaking to her to find out what her problem was. And all she could say is, "I have had enough. This life is too much. I want to commit suicide." Of course, I went through with her, talking to her, and we even made we made a promise that she was not going to attempt to commit suicide. And I have done follow-up on her, because this is a lady who had been thrown out of her house by her uncle in the capital city. She has no fare, no money to take her back home. And she went to a boyfriend's or a man that she met, had a night there. And by the wee hours of the morning, this girl was chased away. And so she was stranded. She didn't know what to do. So in such cases, as a volunteer, you do all that you can. You speak with her. You give her, you provide, because she had not even had breakfast. She had not even had dinner. So you have to go out of your way, to support such a person. And this is because the country does not have any mechanism put in place to support such people. And so we need advocacy also to help us break the silence, to break the silence on suicide. Advocacy to just talk about these issues, to talk to government so that they can put legal frameworks in place, so that they can put up structures in place that can be able to assist people with mental health. Depression as a source of, as a trigger to suicide is not even understood in our culture. People do not understand, how do you get depressed? That is a question that people ask, because we do not understand depression. We do not understand the symptoms of depression. And so when somebody is depressed, we don't talk about it. We don't address the issue. No wonder children now as young as 8, as young as 7 are committing suicide in schools, and we do not know how to go about it. The symptoms of depression, we do not know what they are. So there is really dire need for mental health services. There is dire need for dialogue, so that we can begin to speak about suicide and how to prevent suicide, so that we do not lose our children, we do not lose our women, we do not lose our men to suicide. Our culture does not even allow our men to talk about their issues. If you begin to talk about your issues, if you are emotional, people will think you're not man enough, And so because of that, people are quiet with their problems. People are not, venting. They're not expressing their emotions. And at the end of the day, you find somebody has committed suicide. You ask yourself, what happened? This was a jovial person. We didn't see it coming. And this is because of lack of understanding on the causes of suicide, lack of understanding lack of mental health services within our nations. A lot has to be done. As we speak about it, we need to talk to the right stakeholders to come in and help this dire situation. So It is my appeal today, to international communities. It is my appeal to government institutions to begin to address the issue of trauma, and trauma in conflict situations, trauma in post-conflict situations, because of the intergenerational trauma that is going on. If we do not deal with this person, then I don't think we can have sustainable peace. I don't think we can have stability. If you have a half of your population or 3/4 of your population that is traumatized because of conflict, and you are not putting measures in place to address that, then for me, I think that is a ticking time bomb. And so we need to address, we need to speak about suicide. We should not keep quiet. Do not be silent. Speak about suicide. Prevent it and respond to it so that we can stop losing our children to suicide. Thank you.